In the summer of 1998, Jacksonville, Florida, was a city of humid heat, sprawling neighborhoods, and the steady rhythm of life along the St. Johns River. University Medical Center, now known as UF Health Jacksonville, stood as one of the city's major hospitals, a place where new lives began every day amid the beeps of monitors and the quiet hope of families. On July 10th, 1998, 15-year-old Shanara Mobley gave birth to her first child, a baby girl. Shanara was young, facing the challenges of teenage pregnancy in a city where support systems could feel stretched thin. The father, Craig Aiken, was not present at the birth. At the time, he was incarcerated and would later reflect on the moment he learned of his daughter's arrival as a bittersweet flash amid his own difficulties. The baby was born prematurely but healthy, weighing in at a small but viable size. She was named Kamiyah Tasha Mobley, a name chosen with care, carrying family significance. For those first few hours, the hospital room held the fragile joy of new motherhood. Shanara, exhausted but holding her daughter close, allowed nurses and staff to come and go as they checked vitals and provided care. Around 8 hours after the birth, in the early afternoon, a woman entered Shanara's room. She was dressed in what appeared to be hospital scrubs, a floral blue smock over green scrub pants, the kind worn by nurses throughout the facility. She introduced herself as a nurse, spoke kindly to the young mother, and offered comfort. Shanara, still recovering and trusting the environment of the hospital, allowed the woman to interact with the baby. The woman asked to hold Kamiyah, perhaps to check on her, or simply to admire the newborn. Shanara handed her daughter over. Moments later, the woman walked out of the room carrying the infant and did not return. It took time for the alarm to be raised. Hospital staff initially assumed it was routine movement within the ward. But when Kamiyah could not be located for feeding or checks, panic set in. Security was alerted. The hospital went into lockdown mode, and police were called. By the late afternoon of July 10th, 1998, Kamiyah Mobley was officially listed as abducted from her mother's arms in what should have been one of the safest places in the world. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office launched an immediate and massive response. Descriptions were circulated. The suspect was a black woman, approximately in her 30s, wearing the described scrubs. No clear surveillance footage from that era captured the exact moment. Hospital security in 1998 was far less advanced than today. But witnesses recalled seeing the woman leave the building calmly, as if she belonged there. News spread quickly. Local television stations interrupted programming with alerts. The story hit national wires. A newborn stolen from a hospital, just hours old. Amber Alert systems did not yet exist in 1998. The first Amber Alert was implemented in 1996 in Texas, but not nationwide until later. So authorities relied on press conferences, flyers, and community tips. Shanara Mobley, still in the hospital bed recovering from childbirth, was devastated. In later interviews and court statements, she described the overwhelming grief and disbelief. "I was hurting," she would say years later, reflecting on the loss that shattered her world in an instant. Craig Aiken, hearing the news from behind bars, felt a profound helplessness. He later shared in interviews how the abduction compounded his own struggles, leaving him unable to protect or even meet his child. The search was massive. Police combed the city, checked airports, bus stations, hospitals, and neighboring areas. Tips flooded in, some promising, most dead ends. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children got involved, keeping Kamiyah's photo and details active. Amber Alerts didn't exist nationwide yet. They were just starting in a few states. So authorities relied on press conferences, media appeals, and the power of community awareness. In the immediate aftermath of July 10, 1998, the search was frantic. Police interviewed every staff member at University Medical Center. They reviewed visitor logs, though protocols back then were looser. No strict ID checks for everyone entering maternity wards. They chased leads across Florida. A woman seen with a baby at a gas station. A tip about a suspicious couple in Georgia. Nothing stuck. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC, added Kamiyah to their database. Her age-progressed images updated every few years, showing what she might look like at 5, at 10, at 15. Those composites became familiar to anyone who followed missing children cases. Over 2,500 tips poured in during the first years alone. Most were well-meaning but wrong. Some were cruel hoaxes. A few seemed promising. Sightings in other states. Women matching the description. But each one ended the same way. No match. No trace. The case went cold, but it was never forgotten. Detectives kept the file active. Anniversaries brought press conferences. Shannara appeared on local news, her voice steady, but her eyes carrying the same pain from day one. "She's out there somewhere," she would say. "I just want to know she's okay." Shannara rebuilt her life as best she could. She had 3 more children. Siblings who grew up hearing stories about the big sister they never met. She worked, raised her family, and carried the grief quietly. In interviews years later, she spoke of the nights she couldn't sleep, wondering if Kamiyah was safe, loved, fed. Every birthday, every holiday, she reflected, I thought about her. The $1.5 million settlement from the hospital lawsuit in 2000 provided financial stability, but money couldn't fill the void. It was a reminder of the security failure that allowed a stranger to walk out with her newborn. Craig Aiken's path was different. After his release from prison, he tried to piece together a life while holding on to hope for a daughter he had never held. In rare public comments, he described the mix of guilt and longing, the knowledge that he wasn't there the day she was born, and then she was gone. He kept her photo, followed the case from afar, and waited for the call that might never come. Meanwhile, in a small town in South Carolina, about 200 miles north of Jacksonville, life continued under a different name. But no one in Florida knew that. The mystery remained. Where had the baby gone? Had she been taken across state lines, sold, hidden, or worse? The lack of answers tormented everyone involved. No body was ever found, no evidence of harm, but also no confirmation of safety. That uncertainty is often the hardest part for families of the missing. The years ticked by. 2000 became 2005, then 2010. Technology advanced, better databases, DNA improvements, social media. But the case stayed unsolved. Kamiyah would have been starting kindergarten, then middle school, then high school. Her biological family marked those milestones privately. Shannara wondered what her laugh sounded like. Craig imagined teaching her to drive. The NCMEC kept age-progressed photos circulating, hoping someone, somewhere, would recognize the face. Then, in 2016, something stirred. It started with tips, anonymous, quiet, but persistent. In August 2016, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children received information about a young woman in South Carolina whose story didn't quite add up. The tip included a name, a birth date that matched Kamiyah's, and questions about her origins. 3 months later, in November 2016, another tip came in. This one was more direct. Claims that the woman raising the girl had admitted something shocking about how the child came into her life. Detectives in Jacksonville didn't dismiss them. They had chased thousands of leads before, but these felt different, specific, linked to the same person. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, working with the FBI and NCMEC, began digging quietly. They pulled records, checked documents, followed the paper trail. What they found raised red flags immediately. The young woman's birth certificate appeared fraudulent. Her social security number traced back to a deceased man from Virginia who had passed away years before she was supposedly born. No hospital records matched her supposed birthplace. The inconsistencies piled up. Investigators traveled to Walterboro, South Carolina, a quiet, small community of about 5,000 people. They moved carefully, not wanting to alarm anyone or tip off the wrong person. They interviewed people close to the situation. One witness recalled a conversation from roughly a year and a half earlier. The woman who raised the girl had broken down under pressure and confessed to taking her from a hospital in Jacksonville. Another detail: the girl herself had started questioning things when she tried to get a job. Employers flagged her documents as fake. She pushed for answers and eventually got them from the only mother she had ever known. The pieces were falling into place, but proof was needed, something irrefutable. In early January 2017, detectives made contact. They obtained a DNA sample from the young woman. They already had a sample preserved from Kamiyah Mobley, taken right after her birth in 1998, standard procedure for newborns at the time. The two swabs were sent for comparison. The results came back quickly. A match, not partial, full. The young woman living in Walterboro was, without question, Kamiyah Mobley. 18 years after she vanished from a hospital room, she was found, alive, healthy, and now at the center of a revelation that would upend 3 lives. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office announced the breakthrough on January 12, 2017. Sheriff Mike Williams stood at a press conference. "We have located Kamiyah Mobley. She is alive and well." The room erupted. For Shannara and Craig, the news arrived like a thunderclap. Joy mixed with disbelief, tears, and a flood of questions. But the story was far from over. The woman who had raised her for 18 years was now facing charges. And Kamiyah, now 18, on the cusp of adulthood, had to navigate the collision of 2 worlds she never knew could exist together. On January 12, 2017, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office held a press conference that would change everything. Sheriff Mike Williams stepped to the podium, flanked by detectives and representatives from the FBI and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Cameras flashed. The room was packed with reporters who had covered this case on and off for nearly 2 decades. Many had grown up with the story, seen the age-progressed photos evolve from baby to teenager. The sheriff spoke clearly. "After an exhaustive 18-year investigation, we have located Kamiyah Mobley. She is alive and well." A collective gasp rippled through the room, then applause, then tears from some in the audience who had followed the case personally. Sheriff Williams continued, "Kamiyah was located in Walterboro, South Carolina. She is safe, she is healthy, and she is being reunited with her biological family." He did not name the person who had raised her, not yet, but he confirmed that an arrest had been made earlier that day. A 51-year-old woman had been taken into custody without incident. She faced charges of kidnapping and interference with custody. Her name would soon become public: Gloria Williams. Gloria Williams had lived in Walterboro for years. She worked various jobs, kept a low profile, and raised the girl she called her daughter. According to investigators, Williams had confessed during questioning. She admitted to traveling to Jacksonville in July 1998, entering University Medical Center, dressed in scrubs she had purchased, posing as a nurse, gaining the trust of the young mother, and walking out with the newborn. She said she had recently suffered the stillbirth of her own child and was overwhelmed by grief. In her words to detectives, she couldn't go home empty-handed. She drove back to South Carolina with the baby, created a new identity for her, and raised her as Alexis Kelly Manigault. The confession was emotional but straightforward. Williams did not deny the act. She had forged documents, a birth certificate, social security number pulled from a deceased person's records, and lived with the secret for 18 years, until the pressure built. Until her daughter started asking questions about inconsistencies in her paperwork. Until anonymous tips reached law enforcement. When detectives arrived in Walterboro, they approached carefully. They spoke with Alexis first, now 18, a recent high school graduate working part-time, planning her future. They explained who they were, why they were there, and showed her the age-progressed photo of Kamiyah Mobley. They told her the DNA results. She was, without question, the missing child from Jacksonville. Her reaction, according to law enforcement accounts and later interviews, was stunned silence at first, then tears, then questions. She had lived her entire life believing Gloria Williams was her biological mother. She had no memory of any other life. Yet the evidence was undeniable. That same day, January 12, 2017, Gloria Williams was arrested. She was extradited to Florida to face charges. Bail was denied. She was held without bond pending trial. Meanwhile, in Jacksonville, Kamiyah Mobley received the call she had waited 18 years for. She was at home when detectives arrived. They sat her down gently. "We found her," they said. "She's alive. She's okay." Kamiyah collapsed into sobs, tears of relief, joy, disbelief, grief, all at once. She called family members. Word spread quickly. Craig Aiken got the news shortly after. He later described the moment. "I just broke down. I couldn't believe it was real." The first contact happened that evening, through technology, because the distance was still there and emotions needed space. A video call was arranged. Kamiyah sat in her living room, surrounded by loved ones. On the other end, in South Carolina, Kamiyah, still processing everything, joined from a secure location with support from investigators. The screen lit up. Two women who had never seen each other's faces in person stared at one another. Kamiyah spoke first, her voice trembling. "Hi, baby, I'm your mama." Kamiyah looked back, eyes wide. She smiled through tears. "Hi, Mom." They talked for a long time, awkward at first, then flowing. Kamiyah asked simple questions. "Are you okay? Do you like school? What's your favorite color?" Kamiyah answered softly, still reeling. She asked her own questions. "What was I like as a baby? Did you look for me every day?" Kamiyah answered honestly, "Every single day." Craig joined the call later. His first words to his daughter were simple and heavy with emotion. "I love you. I've always loved you." Kamiyah listened. She later said in interviews that hearing their voices felt both strange and familiar, like something clicking into place that she hadn't known was missing. Over the next few days, more calls happened. Photos were exchanged. Stories were shared. Shannara sent pictures of the family, siblings who had grown up hearing about big sister Kamiyah. Kamiyah sent back images of her life in Walterboro, graduation photos, friends, everyday moments. But the reunion was not simple. Kamiyah had spent 18 years calling Gloria Williams Mom. That woman had fed her, clothed her, taken her to school, comforted her through nightmares, celebrated her birthdays. Kamiyah had no memories of Shannara or Craig. She had no resentment toward Gloria, at least not yet. In early interviews after the discovery, Kamiyah spoke openly. "I love the woman who raised me. She's still my mom. I don't hate her. I'm hurt, but I still love her." This complexity stunned many observers. The public expected rage, rejection. Instead, Kamiyah showed loyalty to both women. She visited Gloria in jail. She called her regularly. She cried for the pain Gloria was facing. At the same time, she began building a relationship with Shannara and Craig, slowly, carefully, on her own terms. Shannara understood. In interviews, she said, "I don't want to take anything away from her. She has 2 moms now. I just want to be part of her life." Craig echoed the sentiment. "She's grown. She gets to decide what this looks like." The media coverage was intense. National outlets flew to Jacksonville and Walterboro. Good Morning America, 2020, Dateline. All wanted the story. Kamiyah appeared in several interviews, always composed, always thoughtful. She spoke about the shock of learning her name wasn't Alexis, that her birth certificate was fake, that the life she knew had a hidden origin. "I had a good life," she said in one early interview. "I was loved. I went to school. I had friends. I was happy. But now I know there was another family waiting for me." She also addressed the woman who took her. "I don't condone what she did, but I can't erase 18 years of her being there for me." Gloria Williams, from jail, expressed remorse in court filings. She wrote letters apologizing to Shannara and to Kamiyah. She pleaded guilty later that year to avoid a lengthy trial. On February 6, 2018, more than a year after the discovery, Gloria Williams stood before a judge in Jacksonville. She entered a guilty plea to kidnapping and interference with custody. The sentence, 18 years in prison, the maximum allowed under the plea deal. She was ordered to have no contact with Kamiyah unless Kamiyah initiated it. At the sentencing hearing, Shannara spoke directly to Gloria. "You took my baby from me, but God gave her back. I forgive you, but I will never forget." Kamiyah was not in the courtroom that day. She chose to stay away, but she later said she had mixed feelings about the sentence. She wanted justice, but she also grieved for the woman who raised her. By 2018, Kamiyah had begun spending time in Jacksonville. She met her siblings, 3 younger brothers and sisters who welcomed her with open arms. She met extended family. She visited the hospital where she was born, not as a tourist, but as someone reclaiming a piece of her story. She legally changed her name back to Kamiyah Mobley, though she kept Alexis as a middle name in some contexts. She enrolled in college, pursued her interests, and slowly navigated 2 families. The story did not end with the reunion. It evolved into something more complicated, more human. 2 mothers, 1 father. 1 young woman caught between worlds, refusing to choose sides, insisting on love for both. And through it all, the central truth remained. After 18 years of questions, Kamiyah was home, not just in one place, but in the hearts of the people who had waited, searched, and never stopped believing she was alive. Kamiyah maintained contact with Gloria Williams. She visited her in jail multiple times before the transfer to Florida. She made phone calls. She wrote letters. Kamiyah said plainly, "She raised me. She was there for every birthday, every heartbreak, every success. I can't just turn that off because I found out the truth. I love her too." Shannara, to her credit, never asked Kamiyah to choose. In a 2018 interview with ABC News, Shannara said, "I spent 18 years praying she was alive and loved. God answered that prayer in a way I didn't expect. She has 2 mothers now. I'm okay with that." Craig Aiken expressed similar grace. "My job is to be here for her now, however she wants me to be. I'm not competing with anyone." By 2019-2020, Kamiyah had legally reclaimed her birth name, Kamiyah Mobley. She sometimes used Alexis Kelly Mobley or Alexis Manigault in personal contexts, honoring the identity she had lived with for so long. She enrolled in college in South Carolina, pursuing studies in a field she has kept relatively private, though she has mentioned interests in psychology and helping others. She worked part-time jobs, maintained friendships from her Walterboro life, and gradually integrated visits to Florida into her routine. In 2020, Lifetime aired a dramatized movie, Stolen by My Mother, the Kamiyah Mobley story, executive produced in consultation with the Real Family. Kamiyah appeared in promotional interviews alongside Shannara. She spoke candidly about watching the film. "It was hard to see parts of it, but it's our story. It happened, and I'm proud of how my family handled everything." Social media became a window into her life. On Instagram and Facebook, under variations of her names, Kamiyah posted photos with both sides of her family: graduations, holidays, casual selfies. Captions were often simple: gratitude, love, faith. She frequently referenced God and spirituality as anchors through the upheaval. "Everything happens for a reason," she wrote in one post. "I'm just trying to live in the truth now." As the years passed, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, into 2025, the intensity of media attention faded, as it often does. Kamiyah turned 25 in July 2023, then 26 in 2024, 27 in 2025. She has kept a relatively low profile in recent years, focusing on her education, career, and personal relationships. Public updates are sporadic but positive. Photos with siblings, celebrations with Shannara and Craig, occasional mentions of continued contact with Gloria through letters or approved calls as prison rules allow. There have been no major public conflicts, no tell-all books from one side against the other, no dramatic falling outs shared online. Instead, what has emerged is something quieter and rarer: acceptance of complexity. Shannara has spoken in occasional interviews about the healing process. "It's not perfect," she said in a 2022 segment. "Some days are harder than others, but I have my daughter back in my life. That's what matters most." Craig has stayed more private, but has shared in brief comments that he is grateful for every moment he gets: phone calls, visits, seeing her smile in person. Gloria Williams remains incarcerated. As of early 2026, there are no reports of early release or parole hearings that have succeeded. She has reportedly expressed continued remorse in prison communications, though details are limited. For Kamiyah, the journey continues. She has described herself as someone who lives between 2 homes, 2 mothers, 2 histories. In a rare 2023 interview clip that resurfaced online, she said, "I don't feel like I have to pick a side. I can love them both. One gave me life. The other gave me a life. Both are part of who I am. That statement captures the heart of why this case resonates so deeply. It isn't just about a kidnapping and a miraculous reunion. It's about what happens after the cameras leave. When the DNA test is done, the guilty plea entered, the sentence handed down. When a young woman has to decide how to carry two mothers in her heart without breaking either one. The case also left a legacy in Florida. Hospital security protocols changed after 1998. Stricter visitor badges, infant tagging systems, more cameras. Kamiyah's abduction is cited in training for maternity ward staff nationwide as a reminder that danger can wear scrubs and speak softly. For the thousands of other families still waiting, parents of missing children whose files remain open, this story offers something precious: hope. Not a guarantee, but proof that sometimes, after decades, a child can still come home, alive, whole, able to love. As of January 2026, nearly 28 years since that July day in Jacksonville, Kamiyah Mobley is living her life on her own terms. She is educated, independent, spiritual, surrounded by people who love her. She has siblings who adore her, parents who waited almost 2 decades to hold her, and a second mother who, despite everything, remains part of her story. She is proof that families can be remade, even after the worst kind of fracture. And somewhere, in the quiet spaces between phone calls and visits, 2 mothers and 1 father continue to do the hardest thing of all. Let her decide what family means. And that brings us to the end of Kamiyah Mobley's incredible, heartbreaking, and ultimately hopeful story. After 18 years of questions, pain, waiting, and finally a miracle reunion, what stands out most is her grace. The way she refused to choose between 2 mothers. The way both families found a way to hold space for love, forgiveness, and healing. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful endings aren't perfect. They're real, complicated, and deeply human. If this story touched you, if it made you think about family, resilience, hope, or the thousands of other families still waiting for their own answers, thank you so much for staying with me until the very end. It truly means the world to have you here, listening, feeling these moments with me. Stories like this don't just happen by chance. They remind us how precious every connection is and how important it is to never stop hoping. If you'd like to hear more real-life cases that explore the mysteries, the heartbreaks, the reunions, and the unbreakable human spirit, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. A simple like on this video helps the story reach more people who need to hear it. And if there's a particular case you'd love to see covered, drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. Thank you again, from the bottom of my heart, for your time, your attention, and your support. You make this channel possible. Until the next true story, take care of yourselves, hold your loved ones close, and I'll see you in the next video.